He just deprived me of one great joy I was looking forward to. Probably the only chance I was going to have in my life of removing a Harvard hood and replacing it. I'm not sure I should read this next part, but I'm tired of change. Philip Lawler, by virtue of the authority granted to me on behalf of the Thomas More College of Liberal Arts, I am pleased to award you our degree, the Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa, and invite you to address the Assembly.
Thank you very much, William, for that generous introduction. I'm just sorry my parents weren't here because my father would have been very proud to hear you say all those nice things about me, and my mother might even have believed them. You heard this morning, nobody remembers graduation speeches. And when William Fahey asked me to give a speech today, I thought about my graduation and the speaker that I heard that day. Don't know who he was. Was it good? Couldn't tell you. What did he say? Haven't a clue. So don't worry. This will be over soon. We'll get through it together. This is very large font. It's no secret, I suppose, that some of you came here thinking that you were going to hear a world-class literary scholar and translator, and instead you get a broken-down, shabby old journalist. And I apologize for that. I remember reading that Mark Twain, when he was invited to speak to a highfalutin literary society, he said, "Homer's dead, Shakespeare's dead, and I am not feeling so well myself." Reverend Father, honest teachers, mothers and fathers, family and friends, you'll forgive me, I hope, if I address my remarks today primarily to the young people of the graduating class of 2019. That was an applause line. Try to keep up. In doing so, I do not mean to denigrate your achievement. As I grow older, as the years pass since I was a fresh-faced young graduate with hair on my head, I appreciate more and more the extraordinary importance of the parents, the teachers, the family members in shaping young lives. You, too, have fought the good fight. Today, you can say that you have won the race. I sincerely hope a few minutes from now, when this ceremony is finished, that today's graduates will make it their first order of business to thank you, to let you know that they know how much you have done, how hard you have worked, how much care you've taken to bring them to this place today. But that's their business, not mine. For me, the challenge is to say in a few minutes, and I promise it will be a few minutes, as Henry VIII said to wife V, I will not keep you long. Something that might inspire or at least amuse or somehow stay in the storehouse of memory, along with so many other happy memories of this busy day and this busy school. As I began to think about what I would say today, I realized that 50 years ago, I was ending my first year in college, having survived what was arguably the wildest year of the wild campus revolts of the 1960s. Complete with a radical takeover of the administration building, which forced the college to call in police to clear the building and bust a few heads, which in turn prompted a student strike, the students struck by ceasing to learn, which is what they were paying for. The strike spawned dozens of campus meetings to discuss the crisis, and as I told students in one of my tutorials last year, at one of those meetings, a radical leader gave an impassioned plea for a campus-wide condemnation of the Vietnam War. He reasoned that the people of America have a right to know what Harvard students think. And he was right, of course. The people do have a right to know what Harvard students think. Whether they want to exercise that right is another question. Because the problem is that at Harvard and at other schools with enviable reputations, more and more often, students don't think. They are trained, dare I say programmed, to express fashionable opinions, even opinions that might be, yes, veering toward quackery. They are trained to recoil at what is politically incorrect. They are encouraged to complain if they are threatened by unpopular ideas, ideas that might interfere with their sybaritic enjoyment of academic privileges. But are they really privileged? Yes, they have wonderful resources at their disposal. The luxurious dorm rooms, the athletic facilities, the enormous libraries, and let's be honest, the sweet money-making smell given off by an Ivy League diploma. But if you come to college to be educated, are they privileged? President James Garfield, referring to a professor who had made a profound impression upon him, said that the ideal college education would consist of Mark Hopkins on one end of a log and a student on the other. Today, Thomas More College is a rare place where you might regularly have one-on-one students with a professor, and for that matter, he might quite literally be sitting on the other end of a log. But I digress. If you recall, before I began wool gathering about my own misspent youth, I was asking what I could say in a short time to young men and women who have spent these last years acquiring the intoxicating taste for the liberal arts. I do not propose to delve deeply into the realms of philosophy. If Thomas More College has done its job at all, you would soon recognize that my own ideas on philosophy are neither original nor profound. Actually, I take some pride in that fact. You will surely observe as you pass through life that most truly original ideas are really quite stupid. Since I'm only a second-hand merchant, a retail trader in ideas, a simple practical journalist, let me offer a simple practical suggestion. Don't take the soup. No, I'm not talking about the luncheon menu. I'm making a historical allusion to my own ethnic background. Generations ago, when the Catholic Church was suffering under persecution in Ireland, my own ancestors were among the poor peasants who were tempted by their English overlords. If they would renounce the faith, they would receive a bowl of nutritious soup. That soup was terribly attractive to people who constantly lived on the edge of starvation. It was difficult to condemn the people who accepted the offer. Still, my feisty Irish ancestor preferred hunger. God bless him. And it became a pattern for those faithful people and thousands of others across Ireland to shake their heads mournfully over someone who had succumbed to the temptation and to say, more in sadness than in anger, but surely in judgment, he took the soup. Don't take the soup. Today you're leaving a small school, a tiny school really, where you've been privileged to receive a very precious sort of education. You've been nourished in the belief, a terribly unfashionable belief these days, that there is such a thing as truth, and that truth matters. You've been trained to take your intellectual bearings from all the best that has been said and written and thought, to pursue what is true and good and beautiful, rather than the fads and fashions that dominate today's headlines and style pages. And now, today, in a very few moments, you will be presented with a diploma and sent out into the world to serve the truth as you have come to know it here. Well, it's a shame to mar this festive day with bad news, but what I'm about to say isn't really news at all. Remember what I said, I'm not original. The unhappy fact is that our society is not anxiously waiting for a new infusion of young people ready and willing to serve the truth. You have this much in common with my old counterparts at Harvard. The world out there really isn't waiting to hear from you. Quite the contrary. In your case, if anything, society is anxiously waiting for young people who will serve the day's intellectual fashions. As you leave Thomas More College and head off looking for new fields to conquer, you will find, perhaps in graduate school, perhaps in your career, perhaps in the neighborhood where sometime in the future you will settle down to raise children of your own, you'll find a seemingly infinite range of temptations, luring you away from the principles you've learned here. You'll find that you're invited to more fashionable parties. You're considered for more prestigious positions. You are offered higher salaries, all if you're willing to compromise your principles. And there's more. You'll be told, if you haven't been told already, and I bet you have, that your education has been sadly deficient, too narrow, too rigorous, too judgmental, too cloistered, too traditional, too theoretical. Very rarely will someone ask you bluntly to forsake your principles, so no, the temptations will be much more subtle. You'll be asked to expand your horizons, to appreciate a rather different cultural perspective, to be tolerant, to be open to new ideas. Remember, new ideas? To embrace the gods of pluralism. Moreover, these temptations will often come from people who are both respected and respectable, people you would love dearly to satisfy. Don't take the soup. You're familiar, I know, with the famous metaphor of the cave in Plato's Republic, in which people know only the shadows of the wall, until finally some bold man ventures out into the sunshine to encounter the reality which, before, he knew only as a series of shadows. There will be people in your life who will argue that you, studying here in Merrimack, were like those people huddled in front of the shadows. They will argue that this little school was an artificial environment as limited as the walls of that cave. I sincerely hope you know better. I hope you realize that the world of ideas which you encountered here is infinitely more spacious, more exciting, more challenging than the shallow, artificial world of reality shows and Facebook memes. Seen through the editorial eyes of the New York Times, this school may be a tiny, insignificant place. But in the infinitely brighter light of the New Testament, the superficial glitter of Wall Street or the Washington Beltway or Rodeo Drive are epiphenomena of history. Long after these little worlds are gone and forgotten, our world, the universal church, will endure in all her glory. Today, as you march forth to confront the world, the flesh, and the devil, I know you'll have your setbacks, we all do. Maybe the world's hostility toward you will bring you to face prison and persecution. That is a possibility that many of us have faced already and will, I regretfully believe, face many more in the future. But far more likely, you will be threatened with the death of 1,000 cuts, the white martyrdom that comes from 1,000 petty humiliations. You will not pass every test in this life. No one does. Some of your failures will come because the world does not love you, does not understand you, in fact, does not want you. Other failures will be the product of your own faults and failings. All these failures represent tragedies. But a greater tragedy will be if, instead of embracing the struggle, you sue for peace and abandon your principles. It's a sad thing to be a sinner. It's much sadder to be a sinner and a coward, too. Well, go to it. As you grow older and your idealism is tempered by the realism that grows out of experience, you will certainly learn to pursue your goals more prudently. And that's a good thing. But do not abandon those goals. Do not let the passage of time and the onset of comfortable middle age find you any less idealistic. Yes, you must learn when to fight your battles and how to fight your battles. But do not cherish the illusion that you can avoid your battles. We need the leaven in our society, which our Lord challenged us to be. We need what Pope Benedict XVI described as the creative minority of Christians, that small but dedicated cadre that will work to transform a society suffering from cultural apathy. We need it because without it, our culture is doomed. Bear in mind that Benedict borrowed that phrase, creative minority, from the historian Arnold Toynbee, who observed, civilizations die from suicide, not by murder. Civilizational suicide. Pope John Paul II termed it the culture of death. And we are the people, by virtue of our training, but more importantly, by virtue of our baptismal calling, who must somehow talk our society off the ledge. How do we do that? I don't have the answers. I kind of hope you do. But I know this much. We won't win this race by passivity, by crawling into our dens and waiting for the end. The church, I've come to realize, isn't particularly good at playing defense. What's true in biology is at least as true in the spiritual life. Growth is a sign of life, and if you're not growing, if you're not spreading the faith, you're already beginning to die. Let me tell you a story that has moved me very deeply, an incident in which I was involved personally. And some of you are involved, too, at a distance. 5 years ago, at just about this time in the month of May, a group of Satanists announced that they would hold a black mass on the campus of Harvard. The school's president, Drew Faust, I'm not kidding, the name is Dr. Faust, issued an orotund statement about the absolute value of academic freedom and said that although she did not approve of the Black Mass, in fact, she abhorred the idea, she could not discover a principle that it would allow her to ban it. Here in Merrimack, Dr. Fahey, who obviously had no power to stop the outrage on another campus, nevertheless sprang into action. He planned a 3-day program of prayers and penance in which the Thomas More faculty and student body joined, an all-out campaign of spiritual warfare to stop the atrocity. On the day the Black Mass was scheduled, TMC students who were taking their final exams asked permission to leave the testing room just long enough to join in the Divine Mercy Chaplet. Later in the day, the whole community joined in singing Vespers and then learned that the Black Mass would not take place. As I say, I'm very moved by this still. I hope I can get through this. My wife Lila and I heard that same day about another initiative, a group of students who had organized a Eucharistic procession down Massachusetts Avenue in Cambridge, from MIT to Harvard Square. We quickly decided to join, assuming that we would be part of a small, despised band. How wrong we were. We could barely find a seat in the chapel at MIT when the procession began. Hundreds of people were waiting outside to join us when we left. The procession stretched far enough along Massachusetts Avenue, down the heart of Massachusetts' biggest street in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The procession stretched long enough so that I couldn't see either the front or the back of the line. People on the sidewalks were joining in us and singing hymns. I can't forget seeing the woman who fell to her knees, seeing our Eucharistic Lord passing by. When we reached Harvard Square, we shoehorned our way into a jam-packed St. Paul's Church. And there I had an experience that's rare for me these days. I was one of the oldest people in the congregation. There, for 1 hour, we joined in adoration, and there we showed the power of our faith. Alive, vigorous, unapologetic, profound, not as an intellectual matter, but as a matter of love. Earlier this week, I wrote some reflections on that amazing evening 5 years ago and posted them on my Catholic Culture site. Sure enough, a Satanist chimed in, posting his own complaint that the majority religion had bullied the minority. It's absurd, of course, to say that Catholicism or even Christianity is a majority religion in today's Cambridge. It looks equally absurd to say that we bullied people with a quiet, prayerful march, never coming within a quarter mile of where they had planned their event. Yet I wonder. Awesome powers are unleashed by the adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, whether it's done here in the chapel behind us or on the streets of Cambridge. I've seen those powers at work. I can testify to them. Who knows how those powers worked on the poor, benighted souls of the Satanists? The fact is, whatever else happened, there was no Black Mass that evening. Something remarkable happened that night. Now, I confidently predict that we shall see the results for years to come. Grace is real, and grace works in unpredictable ways. How many non-Catholic students went to St. Paul's just to show their respect for Catholic friends and classmates, and saw something else there that will spark an interest in the faith and draw them to the church? How many young men, as they renewed their devotion to the Eucharist, felt the first stirrings of a call to the priesthood? We didn't win merely a battle that night. We launched an offensive. We need you, graduates, now to launch your own offensive. Go out and spread the good news. Think of today as your commissioning ceremonies. You have all the credentials you need. You're baptized, confirmed, and now you're stamped with the letters BA. Think of that, BA. Take some chances. You already took a chance by coming to Thomas More College, and Thomas More College took a chance on you, as Thomas More College has taken a chance on me today. Take chances. As Mother Angelica said, if you aren't willing to do the ridiculous, God will not do the miraculous. When you have God, you don't have to know everything about it. Just do it. And here's one thing you should do, at least most of you should do, if you're not called to the priesthood or religious life, to counteract the deleterious influences of the culture of death. Get married and make babies. There is no witness to the beauty of life stronger than the witness of a little child. While some of your mixed-up contemporaries go on a sex strike in a futile attempt to eliminate their reproductive powers, use your God-given power to bring about life, to raise children formed in the faith. Demography is destiny. We win. Be confident. You've read to the end of the book. You know how the story ends. You should go forth today and every day with what Mark Twain called the quiet confidence of a Christian holding 4 aces. Or let me put it in a somewhat more exalted form. Remember the Lord's promise to his church that the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Now I know and you know that here the gates are used as a dramatic image to convey the power of a city. But bear with me while I explore that image just a bit. You've probably heard of muggings. Have you ever heard of someone being mugged by a mugger with a gate? No, of course not. A gate is a weapon of defense. Gates don't prevail in the sense that they cannot overwhelm an opponent. The question is whether the gates can endure, whether they can withstand an onslaught. And if the gates, whatever they are, however strong they may be, if the gates of the secular city are battered with the truth and the beauty and goodness, we know the answer to that question. They cannot endure. Let me close by offering to all today's graduates my hearty congratulations. My sincere best wishes for whatever ventures you will choose to pursue in life. And my one simple, homely, practical suggestion, by now you should know what I'm going to say. Don't take the soup.